I'm Hilary. I work at the Stroke Association, and I'm chairing this session, which is in two parts. The first part is called Making Stroke a Priority Across the UK. And the second part is called Listening to You, Loud and Clear. Both have information to share from speakers, and both have time for questions and comments afterwards. And the first session is also being live streamed on Facebook, so welcome our Facebook audience. So firstly, making stroke a priority across the UK. I'll be welcoming 4 people to join me up here for a chat on our couches. Think Graham Norton, but about stroke. I'll be welcoming Juliet, Deb, Emma, and Charlotte, one by one, and then we'll have time to talk together. And what we'll be talking about is on our slide. So those are our speakers, and this is what we'll be talking about. How did we get to where we are with stroke as a priority? What is the National Stroke Programme for England doing? And how are we making stroke a priority across the other countries of the UK? So first up, Juliet. Do come and join me up here, if you'd like to sit there. Okay. Welcome, Juliet.
Hello, Hilary.
So first of all, tell us what your role is, and then I've got a question for you.
So morning, everybody. It's really nice to see you all. I hope all of you in the room had a fantastic evening last night. Megan was truly inspiring, wasn't she? So I'm Juliet. I'm the Chief Executive of the Stroke Association, and I also have the privilege of co-chairing the Stroke Programme Delivery Board with NHS England.
Thank you. So tell me, Juliet, how have we made it to this stage where stroke is a priority in England?
So I'll be honest with you, Hilary, it's been a long and quite slow journey. So we started back in 2016 when we realised it was 1 year before the National Stroke Strategy for England was due to end. And we started asking some questions of the government about what their plans were to renew the National Stroke Strategy for England. And they basically came back to us and said, we haven't got any plans. And we were very concerned about that, because as you all know, stroke is the single biggest cause of adult disability in the UK. We know that so much can be done to improve stroke outcomes, and we basically didn't take no for an answer. So what we decided to do was to run a campaign to ensure that actually the government and the NHS in England made stroke the priority it needs to be. So what we started with was the case for change. We knew we needed data and evidence to make our arguments strong and compelling. So we started off with a survey of over 2,000 stroke survivors and their carers, and that survey told us resoundingly clear that the area that you felt was most neglected was when stroke patients were discharged from hospital back in the community. And you all said to us, that's when you feel abandoned. That's when you feel that you're not being given the rehabilitation and the long-term support that you need. We also pulled together the evidence around what we know works in stroke prevention, stroke treatment, and rehabilitation. Because actually, we know a lot about what works, and we know a lot about what improves outcomes and what saves money. So we pulled all of that together into a compelling document. And then we decided to target the Department of Health and NHS England at the highest levels, because we knew that we had to get to the key decision makers. And we started off engaging stroke survivors, their families, and the general public. And everyone signed a petition. And I think you'll all remember that we had a big public petition back in 2016, and we got over 55,000 signatures, which was absolutely fantastic. And thank you very much to all of you in the audience who signed that petition, because it was a real sort of endorsement for the importance of stroke. We also worked with lots of clinical organisations, the Royal College of GPs, the British Association of Stroke Physicians. We got about 18 clinical organisations to sign up to a consensus statement saying why stroke needed to be a priority. And then we engaged parliamentarians. We did lots of meetings in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. We had a couple of parliamentary receptions. We met the then Under-Secretary of State for Health, somebody called Steve Brine. And that started to mean that MPs got on our side, and they were talking up the case for stroke. And then we went to NHS England, and we knew we needed to go to the top. So we influenced the then medical director for NHS England, somebody called Bruce Keogh, and he committed to chair a stroke programme board. And then with his help, we secured a meeting with Simon Stevens, who's the chief executive of NHS England. And to be honest, that was the clincher.
Fantastic.
And since then, and that meeting was last summer, Simon Stevens said, I commit to stroke being a priority. And then we've managed to get stroke reflected as a new clinical priority in the NHS long-term plan published in January. So we've been successful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Juliet. If you'd like to move over
to
the end of the couch, may I introduce Dr. Deborah Lowe, who'd come up on the platform for me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. Now, Deb, you've got a very long and complicated job title. So first off, just tell us what it is you do.
I'm essentially Deb the Doc. So I'm a stroke doctor from Wirral Arrow Park Hospital, which is just near to Liverpool. But I also work as one of the 2 national clinical leads for stroke medicine, working with terrible title, Getting It Right First Time, which is a programme where clinical experts go around the country and we look at everybody's stroke services and we try as a critical friend to critique them and help people make them better and get it right first time.
Brilliant. I love the title, Getting It Right First Time. So, Deb, can you tell us what the National Stroke Programme is actually doing at the moment? And I think we've got a slide.
Yes, I'd love to, Hilary. This is, I think, the most exciting time for stroke medicine, certainly in the last 20 years since I've been practicing as a doctor. It's the first time we've got resource and finance attached to how we improve stroke care in England, which is a huge positive. The programme's been divided into 5 main work streams that you can see on the screen. And what is really, really positive is, for the first time, it's a linked pathway from end to end. Mm-hmm. And what's even more important, I think, as Juliet alluded to, is this is about putting the rehabilitation bit of the pathway and life after stroke care at the front, because it's the little bit that's been, well, it's not the little bit, it's the big bit that's been massively overlooked. So the pathway, if we talk about prevention first, which is obviously really important, is about obviously how we reduce stroke in the first place, because prevention is always better than cure, we know that. And it's focusing primarily, working with Public Health England on how we encourage our general practitioners and empower people to think about their blood pressure, their cholesterol levels, and be aware of irregular pulses, so atrial fibrillation. The next bit is the sexy bit of the pathway, perhaps. It's how, if you come into hospital, you're seen really quickly by a specialist that knows what they're doing, in a specialist centre that can deliver every aspect of that first really important element of, bundle of care. And that includes whether you need to be given clot-busting drugs, or whether you need to be taken to a specialist centre. There are 24 of them currently around the country that can do clot removal. But that's only for 1 in 10 stroke patients. So the really important bit then is how you get to a stroke unit and how everybody, wherever you are in the country, accesses a stroke unit. And then the next really important element, which has been a little bit forgotten about over the years, is once you've had your stroke and all of the bells and whistles have stopped ringing, what are we going to do once we're ready to discharge the stroke survivor back into the community with their family and carers? And how are we going to make sure that commissioners around the country are commissioning the right elements of stroke, early supported discharge and ongoing rehabilitation in the community? And also other elements of life after stroke care, such as psychological support, support with finances, all of the great work that the Stroke Association do to support just ongoing living and living well. The other really important bit of the pathway is stroke workforce. We know that there's a shortage of staff, especially our wonderful, valuable nursing staff, but it goes across the board, nursing staff, therapy staff. It's utilising what we have in the community, our community assets, so our volunteers, our charities, our voluntary sectors, working closely with our local authority and trying to make sure that everybody is trained and working to their capability levels. It's not about what it says on your badge. It's about what you're capable of doing.
What you can do.
So we're working on that.
Thank you.
And the final bit is around collecting. There's lots of things that we know work for stroke medicine. We know if you've had a stroke and you're still working, that having someone to support you to return back to work is an appropriate thing to do. We've just not got the evidence to demonstrate it. So as part of the long-term plan of the stroke programme, we are looking to collect evidence that supports the things that we know work, and that's really valuable.
Thank you very much, Deb. And if you'd like
Thank
to
you.
go there. Okay. Thank you. And we'll have a chance to take questions after we finish talking to a couple more people. Next, I'd really like to invite Emma Raven up on the platform, a stroke survivor and stroke ambassador. Emma, come and join me. There we go. Thank you. And you'll remember that Juliet mentioned how important it was that we had the voice of lived experience throughout our campaign to make stroke a priority. So first off, Emma, very much welcome.
Thank you.
Can you talk to us about your experience of being involved in making stroke the priority it needs to be?
Yep. I am a stroke survivor. I had my stroke at 33 years old, and I have aphasia. I am campaigning ambassador who volunteers to help our campaign team at the Stroke Association. I've been helping on this campaign from the beginning. I met MPs and told people my story to explain why it was good to have a national stroke programme. I worked with my low stroke group in Merseyside to help with campaign. In January
2018. Yeah.
I came down London to meet with the Stroke Association and people affected by stroke to say what I thought should be in the programme. In March, I was asked to join National Stroke program board. My role on board was share my story and give the views of stroke survive plans being made. I helped to shape program to make sure stroke 5 voices are heard. I really like having my voice heard to make a positive change for people after stroke.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emma. So important to have the voice of lived experience throughout this programme. And finally, our fourth speaker today is Charlotte Nichols. So come on up, Charlotte. And Charlotte, first of all, just tell us what your role is.
Okay, so hello everybody, and I just want to say I'm really glad to be here. This is my first UK Stroke Assembly,
Yay.
so it's wonderful. So I'm Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the Stroke Association. So essentially that's looking at what we think as an organisation really, and how we can respond to the external environment and what's happening there. And also speaking to MPs and politicians across the UK about stroke, about our priorities and how we can make stroke better across the UK.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so what I want to ask you is, we've heard a lot about NHS England and what we're doing in England. Mm-hmm. So how are we working to make stroke a priority across the rest of the UK?
I think it's the next slide, by the way. They've possibly got mixed up.
There you go.
Yes, so obviously we've heard about some of the amazing work that's going on in England at the moment. So this is really an opportunity to take a really quick trip across the UK and have a look at some of the work that we're doing in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. So I'll start off in Wales. The Welsh Government has a stroke delivery plan, which is due to end next year. So we thought that this was a really good opportunity to have a look at how well the stroke delivery plan has worked for people in Wales, really looking at whether stroke prevention has improved things, whether they really are delivering fast, effective treatment, and also seeing whether people feel supported after they leave hospital. So we are holding an inquiry at the moment, and that's with members of the Welsh Government and also members of the Welsh Assembly, so across different political persuasions, to really look at how well this delivery plan has worked, and hopefully our recommendations can then inform what happens further down the line after next year.
Okay, thank you. So that's Wales.
That's Wales. So in Scotland, we've like much of the UK, actually, in Scotland, access to high-quality care is really patchy. And, for example, in 2017, although 600 people were eligible for a mechanical thrombectomy treatment, which is very effective at reducing disability and even saving lives, although 600 people were eligible, only 13 actually received the treatment.
13.
13, yeah. And as you all probably think in the room as well, we thought that was very unacceptable. So we've realised in Scotland, really, this is about making the basics right. Making sure that when people have a stroke, they are going to the right hospital in the right vehicle and are able to receive the treatment that they are eligible for and that they deserve. So we are influencing the Scottish Government at the moment and trying to encourage them to look at the way that stroke services are set up and where hospitals are, and really make sure that people are getting the treatment that they need in a timely way.
Thank you. And finally.
And finally, in Northern Ireland, so around 4,000 people have a stroke each year in Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland Department for Health has launched a public consultation actually looking at a similar thing to what we'd like to see in Scotland. So looking at the basics, where are the hospitals? Are people able to access them in a timely way? And are they receiving the right care that they need? So we, as part of this public consultation, we are looking at forming our own response to it. Obviously, this has the potential to really improve the way that stroke care and treatment is delivered in Northern Ireland. And we're also encouraging stroke survivors and people affected by stroke to have their say and respond to the consultation as well. I would also say that we have just commissioned research in Northern Ireland very recently to look at post-stroke care, really, and to ask stroke survivors their experiences of leaving hospital and life after stroke. And that really highlighted some key gaps for us, particularly around psychological and emotional support for stroke survivors and their carers. So we produced a fantastic report called Struggling to Recover, which is available online, and came up with a few different recommendations about how post-hospital care could be improved. And luckily, the Department for Health has really welcomed the recommendations, and now they're going to use this as a blueprint to improve the whole of life after hospital treatment in Northern Ireland.
Thank you very much for the round-the-world trip. Thank you. You get to stay put. Okay. So lots and lots of information there. And now we've got a bit of time for questions and comments. And I thought first it would be nice to go to our Facebook audience and hear any comments or questions that Facebook have got. So I think I'm probably looking over there.
Yeah, we've got lots of people joining us for the first time on Facebook and sharing their inspiring recovery stories. So Sam Hodson says, the Stroke Association do such fabulous work, thank you. Without your support from my hospital admission, I would not have managed at all. There is not enough help for stroke survivors after discharge, not just physically, but more importantly, the mental well-being. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
We've also had a question from Christopher, which asks, what was it like to work with NHS England?
So what's it like?
To work with NHS England.
To work for NHS England. I think I'll probably look very briefly at Deb, but remember you're being Facebooked and live streamed, okay? And NHS England are watching big time.
I only speak the truth. So it's a challenge because we all have different priorities. NHS England have to commission services that are evidence-based and cost-effective. Delivering really good stroke care is going to cost more, not less. There are no quick wins, no specific interventions that are going to save money, and that's sometimes a difficult pill to swallow. But it's important that as a charity or a doctor or a stroke survivor or a policy influencer, we are all sticking to what we know is the right pathway of care for stroke patients, and we keep telling the same story over and over again. And I have to say, the last 6 months has felt a little bit different, Juliet, hasn't it? Yes. People are listening. Stroke has the same parity of esteem. It's up there with cardiac disease and mental health and children's services, and it's never been there before. So frustrating, but positive.
Okay. Challenging and supportive?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to go to the room where we'd love your questions, and we've got a microphone over there. So I've got 1 and then 2. Okay.
Thanks. Just is it?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, great, thanks. Just a quick question from me. What are you most excited about with the National Stroke Programme?
Okay, what are you most excited about? So quick fire questions, I think. Emma, a couple of words. What are you most excited about?
The National Stroke programme include aims which were suggested by stroke survivor and carer, and we had initial meetings in London. One of the elements at the most excited for is the National Stroke Passport.
Okay.
I want stroke survivor care get more information what support available.
Thank you. So there's Emma's most exciting thing is a stroke passport, which helps navigate and shows you the way. Thank you very much. How about you, Deb?
I'm excited because we're starting to look at patient experiences and patient outcomes, so something called PROMs and PREMs. And we've never done that in stroke, and it means that we're actually starting to collect the things that matter to our stroke survivors and their carers, rather than random numbers that don't mean that people have survived. It's not about whether you're dead or alive at the end of the pathway. It's about whether you're disabled and living well, and we're starting to collect outcomes that means that we can measure that as a success of a stroke service.
Thank you, Deb. How about you, Charlotte? What makes you most excited?
I'd say probably the rehabilitation work stream that's going on, because it feels from what we've heard from a lot of stroke survivors, like the rehabilitation part of the pathway is what's really lacking, that kind of long-term support there. And it really feels like it's at the heart of the National Stroke Programme, and it's very encouraging to hear some health ministers in Parliament talking about the fact that rehabilitation is so key to the success of this programme.
So, Juliet, a bit of a challenge. We've heard rehab being at the front and centre, passport helping stroke survivors navigate, and measures that matter to people affected by stroke. So what's your most exciting part?
So I agree with all of that. The other thing that I would add is 6-month reviews. It still shocks me that when people are discharged from hospital, most of the time you're left to fend for themselves. And NHS England has now given some additional funding this year to roll out 6-month reviews for all stroke survivors. And we are now going to campaign for that funding and that priority to continue. So that should ensure that everyone gets a regular follow-up when they're back at home and they can get their needs better met.
Thank you. Okay, we had a question there, and then I fear we might have to ask other people to ask questions during the break because I'm about to run out of time, but one more here.
Hi, I'm Mick Speed, stroke survivor and assistant coordinator at a stroke support group, amongst other things. One question, first of all, is how serious are NHS England in stroke support?
Thank you. So the question is, how serious are NHS England in stroke support? So I'm going to ask Juliet, you're on the programme board. You don't work for them?
I don't. So I would say more serious than they ever have been. So the focus in stroke has generally been on prevention and treatment, not on rehabilitation and long-term support, and that focus has now changed.
Well, it doesn't show itself in their 10-year plan. At the most, stroke has a paragraph. The other main diseases, conditions, have a page or more.
Yeah.
And there is no detail, it's just a bit of waffle as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So I would like from NHS England some serious detail on how they're going to sort out stroke care in the community.
Yeah.
So
Deb, why don't you talk to that?
I agree, the long-term plan, when you read it, looks slightly disappointing, but behind that, the amount of work and support that NHS England is giving to the National Delivery Board that Juliet and I both sit on is unprecedented. So have faith, and there will be a National Stroke Service Specification, which is a posh way of saying a to-do list for stroke services across the country, because it's no longer acceptable that we've got this level of variation. So keep the faith, because things will be coming in the pipeline.